everyone. Welcome to Painting Crafty. If you're new here, my name's Melanie. Welcome. For my returning art and craft friends. I'm so glad you're taking another art break with me. I'm going to be showing you how I created this whimsical little ghost with her fun little witch hat and her pretty little fall colors all wrapped around her. I'm going to be showing you the drawing steps and then showing you some easy watercolor steps right after that. For those of you who would like to have a little help drawing, you can always go over to my Ko-fi page. That's where I have my subscription for all of the line tracers that I do on my YouTube channel for all my draw-alongs. So hop on over there and take a look. It's very reasonably priced. Well, I'm going to start with the drawing steps and lead into the watercolor. So let's go ahead and start with the drawing steps. Cute little ghost. When I do my drawings, I like to grid it off just to get it, be able to show you how I drew mine and give you an idea of proportions. Whatever size of paper you're going to be using, just go ahead and mark it off straight down the middle and straight across, and that will give you a guide as well. Let's start with our little ghost body. If we look at her, here's my center line. This is where probably her mouth is going to be. You need to leave as much room at the top to be able to put some sort of hat up there. So I'm going to be starting with the center part right like that. So this one is smaller, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to start with my U shape. I'm going to come here. So this would be where her mouth would be off to my side here. So there's my mouth. That gives me an idea. Let's come off to the side here and let's do a U. You just basically want to have a smaller head at the top, and then make your ghost have a little bit of a body shape that gives it a little bit of motion. So it's not just straight down. You want to have a little bit of curves over there. So let's go ahead and put her two eyes in. When I do eyes, I like to usually have them slightly pointing in towards each other. I like the look of way the eyes look that way. Depending on how much you have them curved is going to give her her personality, or him, depending on how you draw it. Now let's go ahead and stick a hat up there. So her hat was a witch hat. We're seeing mostly underneath her hat. So we're going to start a little lower. You can see here I'm down at this line actually. I call these little like flying saucer shapes that are off to the side to create a hat. So let's start here. We're going to come off to the side. If you think you're going over her forehead, that's going to be so it looks like the hat is on top. And then we're going to create those elongated shapes that come off to the side here. I'm going to follow over and then make my next one. And it's probably to go ahead and give it a tilt. This one is going to be slightly higher than this one if you would like to have it a tilt on there. Okay, so now my little hat is on. Now to do the top, you can look right here in the middle of your face of where your head would be. You can go ahead and draw a curvy line, something like that. And then you would draw your hat shape on each side of that. So you would follow your curve around. So there it's on that side. I'm going to come off to this side and follow my curve around that way. Sometimes that just makes it easier to be able to have where your shapes are going to be is to have that one down the center. Then this would all be erased. And there you would have your hat shape sitting right on top of your head that way. Now to do the band, you would do a sad face. Oh, my lid is going to break. You would do a sad face like that, and then another sad face here. By doing the sad face shapes, that's going to help it look like your hat is curving around her head instead of just being flat. Now this is where you can get super creative of whatever design you would like to put inside of your hat. I just did a bow and made the band a different color. So you could do checkers, whatever type of print you would like to do in there. Now she is sitting amongst a little bit of a flower bed and some leaves that are on there. The way I started out is I did my base of my flowers down low, and I just do simple little flowers. And those are going to be C shapes, one this way, like a C, and then back. So it's going to be kind of like a yin and a yang symbol. Let's maybe even make this a little bit bigger so you can see exactly a yin and a yang type of a symbol. And then I'm just going to be curving it around and creating my shapes like that. Normally when I do my shapes, I would start with laying them this way, coming this way. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. You could do 5 if you wanted. And then I put in these big maple leaves. And then these are just smaller little football leaves. So you're going to have your bigger elements down low, and then you're getting smaller as you come up. So I would just start here again, do my little simple flower as I'm coming around. You can fill in with some leaves here. Look at your space, see where it needs to be filled in, and then you're going to create it that way. So I would come up, do a little bit of leaf here. To do a maple leaf, you can go down a simple little line like that with a curve, and then you would come out, back down with a finger size, come to that point, and back around. Then you're going to create the insides. And a football leaf is pretty simple. A football leaf is just going to be exactly what it sounds like. You're going to be drawing your lines up. You're going to come off to the side. A football leaf has a point at one end, and it has that bigger belly at the other in the middle, and then it comes to a point again. So it's like a football leaf. And you can fill in your space as you go up. I did also add a few little berries as filler spaces in there, and you could do that as well. What makes this look really pretty, or I think pretty anyway, is the color selections. So when I did my watercolor, I just stuck to the fall colors is what I did and added those on there. Although the ghost and the Halloween colors, pink is still popular this year, so you could decide you want to do a pink and a black version. Well, that is how I basically did my version of my drawing. And again, for those who might like to have a little bit more help drawing, you can always go over to my Ko-fi page and check that out for where I keep the tracers. Well, that's it for the drawing. Let's roll right on into the painting part. The watercolor I'm going to be using today is my Paul Rubens set, but basically use what you have. It doesn't have to be exactly what I have, but I'm going to be sticking into this warm color family this time around as well. Now I'm going to be starting with my black hat because black, even though it's black, a lot of times it takes more than one layer. You're going to mix to about ink consistency your colors and start with that. Watercolor will stay where your paper is wet, so as long as I don't get too far out into my other areas, that watercolor is going to stay right where I put it. I'm just going to follow my hat right inside of here. Today I'm using the Princeton brushes. I really do enjoy these Princeton brushes. They're still a synthetic brush, but they do have a nice point on them. They've lasted me a very long time, and I believe I bought mine at Michael's. This one is a number 10. Often when you do these base coat paintings, bump up maybe on a brush size that you think might be a little bigger than what you might need. It's just going to very much help the looseness of the stroke of your watercolor painting. So you can see here, I'm just doing rather like a color book style of filling in the space where I want my color and just following along on those areas. With watercolor, you start light and bright and then work your way dark. You're basically painting the shadows of watercolor. So this will be my lightest color of my black, and then I'll be adding a darker layer. Now I need to give this a chance to dry before I were to add my next layers on there. And I don't want to paint inside of my ghost or any area that might be touching my black, because if I come in with water in those areas, my black paint will just follow right where the paper is wet. So I want to give that a chance to dry. So since that's drying and my other parts would be touching that, I'm going to move down here and start doing a little bit of work on my flowers. I'm going to be starting with some of this golden color here. This color is called cadmium yellow. It's got a little bit of light bright color in here. I'm going to be doing a little bit of wet on wet blend. I'm going to start with my lightest, brightest color, and I'm going to be adding that in and leaving a little bit of white on my flowers so they're not adding that color everywhere. And then I'm going to go directly into my bright orange here. This Indian yellow is what it's called. Adding water to about tea consistency. And now I'm going to be tapping that color in to my flower and letting that color blend on its own. And because it's a wet on wet, meaning my paint, my area I was putting my paint into is wet, that color is going to blend on its own and create its own colorations. Okay, there we go. I'm going to pick up a little bit of my burnt sienna. I love this color. And it's a dark rust color, and I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit of that color in there too. You can go directly from your pan if you want to make it darker, more pigment this time, less water. Now I'm going to let that sit a little bit and have those colors blend on their own without me not doing a lot to it, and we're going to see what happens. Now watercolor does lighten as it dries, so this won't be as dark. But if you would like to lift up some color, take your brush, give it a squeeze, and then you can pick up your color in there and you can lighten it up and see how it is. So sometimes it might get a little too dark. You might want to lift some quickly. Go ahead and try doing that. Now I'm going to be moving up, and let's do some of these football leaves since it doesn't touch into these other ones. And let's try that. Oh, you know what? I have one more sitting there. I should have did that one. I was thinking I had 4 and then I couldn't spot it. I just couldn't see it. Okay, let's quickly make up some more of this color here so I can do these ones as well. Okay, let's touch this one. There. I thought for sure I had another one, and sure enough I did. I just couldn't see it. Okay, let's see what this is going to look like. Lift a little bit of that color, let that sit. All right, let's go ahead and do some of the green. Now the green color I'm going to be using for my football leaves is this color here called Hooker's Green. Let's see, we're going to come this direction. You can tone it down too by adding a little bit of rust to your colors if you even want to make them a little bit more neutral. But I'm going to take a little bit of this green, and wherever my football leaves are, and wherever they're not touching another leaf, I'm going to be adding this green in there first. And I'm not going to touch my hat because I don't want that green to roll right into my hat. But I'm going to be laying this color in. And then I'm going to be tapping on, let's go in with a little bit of red this time. Let's choose kind of this cadmium red light. Let's add a little bit of that color in there. So I'm going to choose a little bit of that color. It's kind of a nice little rusty color. And I'm going to be tapping that in there. Now, because I have green in there, that red is going to kind of neutralize the green a little bit. So I may end up adding a little bit more of my green back in there. Neutralizing means it's going to tone down that green. I may end up with a little bit of brown look to it, but I'm okay with that if it does turn a little brown. But I'm thinking that looks great, just kind of a fun look. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of that green. And while it's wet, I'm going to do a little bit more tapping of that color and adding it back into my leaves. Neutralizing it. Again, the red and the green are opposite on the color wheel, so they're going to neutralize each other. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that color too. Putting it on, picking it up, and adding that way. You're going to see some really pretty color blends if you choose to do it this way. And see, with watercolor, you do have to be okay with not necessarily having complete and total control over what your colors are going to look like. So you can kind of see here in the camera a little bit how my colors are blending and mixing together. You can see how those oranges are starting to dull a little bit. Let's pick up a little bit more of that burnt sienna color. This is kind of dry, but not all the way dry. And let's tap a little bit more of that color in to add a little bit more darkness and to give some little bit more petals. I'm going to put some of it in the center, around the edge. I like that look. If you wanted to pick up a little bit of the red, you could add a little bit on there. And just kind of tie it into that picture. That center is going to, I want it to be definitely darker in the middle. So like where the flowers curl together, I definitely want it to be darker in there. So let's see how that's going to dry a little bit. Let's pick up a little bit more of that rusty color. And let's do a few of these like mapley leaves, a little bit more. Let's add a little bit more of that color in there. You can see how my black is really lightened up. It no longer looks as dark as what it was when we first laid that color down. So this is more of a rust color, that burnt sienna. I'm going to add that a little bit here. Oh, I can see where I put a dot of, accidentally got a color dot right there. Don't really want that color inside of my ghost. I'm okay if some of this touches here and that color does blend up in there. I think that would be fine to have that happening. I'm going to pick up a little bit of the red. I want a difference in here. I don't want it to be the same as my flowers here. So I need to make some sort of change. Either make it a little bit more red or perhaps even a little bit more green. But I need to have some sort of color change so it's not all the same. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that red color. And let's add that in here too. So now I'm just continuing on with that blend of that wet color, moving into an already wet area. Ooh, that's going to be beautiful. I like that look. I'm going to just keep on going around with this same type of a look. I'm going to try to limit my color palette so I'm not having too many colors all on here. Although I do love to use the color, but I'm going to be trying to keep myself maybe down to maybe 4, maybe 5 different colors would be a good idea. Let's pick up that little bit of that green and let's put this in here too. If I touch a little bit of that flower, I'm okay with that color coming down into my green. I think that would look nice to have that in there. She's coming together. Let's lay another layer of black on. So I'm going to come into my black and I'm going to be mixing it over here to about tea consistency, maybe a little bit more than that for pigment. And let's lay in another layer of color. Now, wherever I thought I wanted to have a highlight, I would want to go around it and leave a highlight in. So that means I wouldn't cover up everything I just put on. So if I wanted to have a highlight here on the top, like that's where my light is coming from, I would want to leave that first color showing. And then I can glaze over the rest of my hat with that color, but leave that little bit of that highlight. Now underneath here, I would definitely want to make it darker, be almost all in shadow, and I wouldn't have any highlights there. So I'm going to be glazing over my color all the way. Now for her eyes and her mouth, you could do it in watercolor if you want to. It's a very dark color of the black, or you could go ahead and use your micron pens if you would like to just use a marker instead. I think I'll do them in my black watercolor too. I should have probably did those the first time around. I'm going to switch down to my brush. I'm going to switch down to a lot smaller size here. And I'm coming in with a lot more pigment right away because I know I want these to be pretty dark and full coverage. Like I said, I could do these in my marker and my micron pen if that would be easier. Okay. If you lay your paint down and it starts dragging, if you can kind of see here where it's dragging there, that means I need to probably add a little bit more either water on my brush, more than likely, so I can get my paint to move. Sometimes I want that dry brush look, but in this particular case, I want this paint to cover that space. Now she doesn't have any highlights in her eyes. She doesn't have any white highlights the way I did them originally. But you could add a few little highlights in here if you would like. Okay, that looks cute. Cute, 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 as we say in Painting Crafty. Now, let's go ahead and add a little bit more color. So these ones are looking good, but I'm going to be adding some more color because they're not quite dark enough. Now this time around, I'm going to be taking some of my red, mixing it in with my burnt sienna color, a little bit more umber in there, and make it a little bit more rich, tone that red down a little bit more. And let's add that a little bit here. This is one of my favorite autumn colors, actually, this reddish rust color. I love that color on my leaves. We have some big old maple trees in our yard, and sugar maples, and they are beautiful in the fall, especially if we get those warm days and cool nights. So, so pretty. Let's pick up a little bit of this yellow. This time, let's add a little bit of that rust color into my yellow. Tone it down just a little bit more. And let's add a little bit of that color to these little flowers. I want to add some more interest there. So I'm glazing on the next layer, adding a little bit more tone to my flowers so they're not so flat. With watercolor, it really is about adding the layers. So take your time. Keep on adding some of those more layers in and really add the depth to your colors. Okay, let's take a little bit of my green again. And this time I'm going to use less water. And I think I'm going to take a little bit of my burnt sienna color and mix that in there and create kind of more of an earthy color green. So I'm mixing a color that looks something like this. I've got a little bit of earthy green in there. And this time I'm going to add that to my leaves. So this would be the darkest shadow. So I'm going to be adding it to the base of my leaf, definitely down here where my leaves connect. And adding that color on. Okay, that looks good. Oh, I love it. I always say fall is my favorite color. Love it, love it, love it. Now my hat should be fairly dry. I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of that green I just put on my other leaves here, and I'm going to put that on my hat band. Now I may end up putting a little bit more black still on my hat yet, but I'm going to lay this color in here. And I created her bow, the one I did, using some of these similar colors that all my leaves and things are made out of. I used that for her bow. Okay, so let's let that dry, see what that looks like, and we might be adding another layer there. I'm going to go ahead and pick up a little bit of this Payne's gray color. It's a beautiful, it's kind of like a, in between a navy. It's got some gray in it. It's got some gray, it's got some blue. I'm going to pick up that color lightly, and that's what I'm going to be using for my shadows. Oh, I may have had some green in here this time, but that's okay. I'm going to come in and just wash a little bit of this. I'm looking for a real thin consistency. So I'm adding a lot of water. I don't want it to be very dark at all, because this is going to be over my ghost and mostly white. I always say when you're painting white, you do want to add some color to it. The best way to paint something white is not to have a lot of white. So add some color to this. And so my brush must have had a little bit of that green in there instead of that blue, but that's okay. I think that looks good. So I'm just folding in a little bit of this color on my fold lines to add some interest to my little ghostie. Maybe a little around her eyes, definitely underneath her hat band here. And again, the more water you add, the lighter it's going to be. Okay, let's let that sit. Let's let that sit. All right, we need to go ahead and add in a few berries around my little guys here. So maybe this is when I will pick up another color here. Maybe this madder red. It's got a little bit of redness to it, but some purple. And maybe I'll pick up some of my orange over here, add that color to it just to tone it a little bit. And let's tap in some berries. And I'm just using the tip of my brush and I'm tapping in this color. Now I'm going to be going back in and adding some more color to it. So I'm going to start with this one and see where it ends. But I do like that kind of that purplish berry color. With these other colors, has a very much a fall tone to it, so I think that should work good with this. Now, if you follow along with me on Facebook, I usually post a picture that has whatever the draw along is going to be. I post that underneath there, and if you would like to share yours, go ahead and pop right on over there and share yours underneath that picture. I love sharing other people's work. It most certainly doesn't have to look like mine to be good, and we all have different ideas of what things should look like, and I think it works wonderful to share yours as well. You encourage others to try. I'm going to pick up a little bit of this orange. Who knows what color's there? I'm just blending my colors right on my palette, coming up with some new colors, and I'm going to be tapping this in just to give these little berries a little bit more interest. So I'm just using my the tip of my brush and adding those colors in. Ooh, oh, I love it. These colors are definitely some colors that I love. You'll have to let me know in the comments if fall is one of your favorite colors to paint with. They are mine. Ooh, I love that look. Isn't that gorgeous? Love it, love it, love it. All right, let's go ahead and work a little bit more on that black. I'm going to add one more layer of black. So let's go ahead and mix up a little bit more. This time I'm going to have a less, ooh, that was the blue. I don't want that one. I'll work with it though. I'm going to add less water this time. So more pigment, less water, about to milk consistency is what I'm kind of looking for. It's a lot darker. And then I'm going to be laying that in on my black. So I'm looking for a nice, rich black look to it. Ooh, that looks great. Now this, even though it's a rich color of black, more than likely it will dry still a layer of charcoal color is what it's going to look like. Okay, let's lay some of this in. Now I'm probably still not going to want to cover it all the way up on my hat. So at the top and going around is where I have my highlights. So I'll probably let a little bit of those colors show through and not covering it all the way up. And that's just going to give my painting a really interesting look. Okay, we'll let that dry. See what that ends up looking like. Okay, so we have this built in. I still need to work on my bow. I'm going to be doing all the little tiny twirly bits, all of those. I'll be doing those with my pen, but I want to give this a chance to dry before I start that. I'm going to be working just a little bit on my background while I'm waiting for my hat to dry. And I'm going to be choosing, let's choose a little bit of that yellow ochre color here. It's kind of a muted color. Is what I'm going to use for my background. I'm going to add a lot of water. I'm not looking for a real intense background. I'm going to leave the inside here. I'm going to leave that bright white, and I'm going to be creating the backdrop around it. So I'm coming in and making that little bit of an arch. Now, watercolor isn't a permanent medium, so I don't want to go in and really scrub super hard where my colors that I've already put on, because they're going to run in to those other colors. Because it hasn't had very much time to dry, I'm moving rather quickly. I'm going to make sure I don't want to go in here and get too big of a puddle and have all my colors float together. So I'm moving quickly, using the tip of my brush, changing my angles back and forth, and then just going right along this area and creating my border. I'm okay with some of it going in there, that's fine. But I'm just moving quickly and creating this coloration in the back here. Okay, we'll let that dry, see what that looks like. Let's go ahead and make this little bow in the middle. So I'm going to just pick up some of the colors that I had used for those flowers down below. I like using my colors throughout my painting. So if I have it somewhere here, I want to have it in another part of my painting. So I want to have some of it up high. I think it looks great to just have your colors danced around on your painting and carry your colors throughout. So there's a little bit of that golden color. Let's go ahead and pick up this little bit of this orangey color and tap that on. Now the inside of your bow areas here, those little pieces in there, those will end up being pretty dark because that's the inside. So there's not going to be a lot of light in there. So those would definitely be darker. The ones on the outside are going to be a little lighter. Now this is that blend on blend technique. So my color is wet and I'm going to be just adding a little bit of that next color in there and touching it, and when I touch it, it's going to blend together. Now these underneath pieces here where I'm painting, those would be darker too. So your lightest part of your bow is going to be the one that's out front, and then those other areas will be darker. So I'm taking a little less water, more pigment, and painting those areas. You can add a little bit on the outsides, tap it there. And let's add a little bit more here on the inside here. Darken that up a little bit more because those are going to be darker. Oh, it's already coming to life. Now, if you want to paint them individually, you could give it a little bit of time to dry before you were to add your next colors on. I'm going to take a little bit of that bright orange that I have here. I'm going to go right directly to my pan. And I'm going to take that and tap it here and see if I can get that color to blend out. If you need to, you can tap it a little bit and drag it with just the tip of your brush and see what kind of look you get. I'll hold this up so you can see. You can see how that color is blending out and creating, and that's because it's following where the water is. All right, let's go ahead and rinse my brush out, and let's go ahead and do a little bit of micron pen work. I'm going to be doing microns because they are permanent. If I decide I need to go back over them, After I've done this part, I can go over them after they're dry. I can easily do that. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of sketch around some of my items. I like doing these light little lines, and I don't necessarily have to copy exactly what I did, so I can go general. You can double up on your lines and make them more than just one. This is, if you are a gel pen user or gel glitter pen user, you could bring out those. You could also bring out your colored crayons. You aren't, not colored crayons, but colored pencils. You may want to give your item a dry with like a blow dryer before you were to come in with your gel pens, just to make sure your item is nice and dry before you put your gel pens on there. Gel pens do have more of an open time. You just have to be careful not to drag your hands through them. This paper is not quite dry enough. I can tell my paper isn't quite dry enough because my pen doesn't want to go over it. Hopefully I didn't wreck my pen. Oh, there it is coming. I should have probably gave it a little bit more time to dry. But I'm in a hurry. Aren't we all? Just taking a little art break. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to dry this. So hang on with me. I'm gonna dry this and I'll come right back. But while I was drying that, I did notice that I did come in with my paintbrush and do all these little twirly twirls. So we could try a little bit of that too. I can come in. What you wanna do is get your color loaded up and have it fairly wet. You're gonna want it fairly wet. When you take your brush, you're going to put your brush in there, get it loaded, and then you're going to twist and pull it towards you. And as you do that, you're going to get a nice tip on your brush. And that's what you're going to be using to be able to create these little twirls. So you can come in just with the tip. You definitely need to have a small little brush. I don't even know what size this is. If this is a 1 or a 0 probably. And I'm using very light pressure on my brush, twirling it. You keep on adding a little bit more. If your brush doesn't move exact, you'll need to add a little bit more water to it. Get that paint nice and loose. So you're getting it nice and loose. Add some water, twist it, and pull it towards you. Use light pressure. You're using just the tip, and you're coming in and creating these little accents. I often just use my pen, so I don't think about doing this, but this is a great look too. So you can come in and do a few little light strokes of that, add in a little bit of your color, and again, you can do a combination of both. You can do some of your line work with the pen, and you could do some of your line work with your brush. And the more you practice this, the better you're going to get, and the faster you're going to get too. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of line work with this and add in some loose line work with my brush, which I don't necessarily do that often, but it's a fun way to do it too. And there she is, all finished. It's fun to see the differences. Every time I do them, they always turn out slightly different, and it's always fun to see what each one looks like. Make sure you sign your piece. I like to take a pencil and sign mine, but you most certainly can do it in pen. And again, if you would like to share yours, pop on over to my Facebook page. I love to share your artwork. I think you encourage other people to try, and I love sharing what you create as well. Well, that is it, my friends. Thanks for joining me this evening, and hopefully you'll come back, and next time you'll create right along with me. Bye now.